Good morning. Welcome to the Basketball Show. I'm your host, Paul Sir. Glad to be back in the studio with Ryan Reed. Ryan, thank you for taking care of things so well last weekend with our good friend Doug McLean.
It was great. And actually this morning, confession, I was almost late. My phone died. So when I woke up, I looked at my phone and it was time. But I was considering just going back to bed because I was like, my alarm hasn't gone off yet. And actually yesterday, my mom texted me at I think 9:15. She's like, no basketball show today? And I freaked out. I had like a confession sorry text texted to you ready to go. So she scared me to death, saying that, thinking I missed it. And then I was like, what am I doing? And she apologized. But
that's tremendous. Well,
yeah.
I was hoping she did it on purpose, but good for you, Mom Reed. That's fantastic. But you guys did such a good job. Doug, having the privilege of calling both the Stingers 3x3, FIBA 5-on-5 with Doug. He's just such a high-quality guy. And anybody who listens to him when he calls the Pandas and Golden Bears games for the University of Alberta always has a great experience. And speaking of Golden Bears, we have the longtime head coach, Barnaby Craddock, in our second segment today at 10:20. Going to talk about the Golden Bear basketball team and season. And our show today is going to, though, I think to no surprise to anybody, Ryan, is going to be heavy NBA, and I mean heavy. We're going into the weeds today about this really historic week of trades that we haven't seen the likes of for decades.
you actually might be the person to ask for where this ranks for your all-time trade deadlines. I mean, you're not super old, but you've seen a lot of trade deadlines in your life. For me, it is, but I don't think that means that much. First trade deadline I remember was probably around like the early 2010s. So.
Well, I mean, yes, I've seen a lot of trades, but this is right up there with the big trades that have happened. And when I think of like in the last 20 to 30 years, the big trades, it would be the Celtics and Ben Golliver. One of our guests is going to talk about that. But, Celtics picking up Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen to win their championship, Shaq, going to the Lakers. There have been trades, but not like this. I mean, the trade of Doncic for Anthony Davis, that's historic. But when you really think of it, going back to 1975, when Kareem was traded from the Milwaukee Bucks to the Los Angeles Lakers, that was as big as this one was. And then, of course, Wilt going to the Lakers as well before that. That was also very big. But this is on par with anything. So we saw a lot of history being made this week. Our text line, by the way, is 833-401-1440. Again, 833-401-1440. Why don't you send in your opinions on what you thought the trades were like this week? And we're going to have guests that will be dealing with the trades. We have Ben Golliver, the Washington Post, great Washington Post NBA writer, who lives in Los Angeles. So he was at the press conference this week with Luka. He has so many great stories. In fact, he was not available today because there is a Laker game, but he and I sat down yesterday, and we have two segments today of Ben's in-depth expert analysis of what's taken place in the NBA. Of course, it's heavily Los Angeles Laker oriented, but we go into the Spurs, we go into the Warriors. It's just great, great stuff. And we're going to talk specifically about the Raptors with Ryan Wolstadt from the Toronto Sun. Ryan's a longtime friend of the show, and we'll go into the impact of bringing Brandon Ingram into the Raptors and some of the befuddling questions around this particular move. So, Ryan, let's share with our listeners what our poll question today. We did it a little differently.
So the poll on basketball_show on Twitter is which team benefited the most from the 2025 NBA trade deadline. We have the Los Angeles Lakers. They may have gotten Luka Doncic, as we've been talking about. The Spurs got a certain player that I do not associate with anymore. And
I will not. He whose name I won't mention.
We got the Golden State Warriors, who picked up Jimmy Butler. Then we also have the Dallas Mavericks, in case you think Anthony Davis is just the truth and will transform their team.
It's going to be, boy, oh boy, the in-depth discussions that we're going to have. And why don't you and I just jump right into it, Ryan, because you're a passionate Sacramento Kings fan. So I spend a lot of time with Ben on the Lakers. Let's talk specifically about the Kings and the Spurs. and what needed to take place there. Okay, being the longtime Kings fan that you are, how are you feeling about the direction of this team? Was this something that was just, a reality for a small market team that they had to do something? And in the end, what they did, does it hurt them or help them, or is it a pretty much a neutral situation?
It's definitely not neutral, I'd say. De'Aaron Fox is a special player. So the clock is always ticking. As you mentioned, small market team, you kind of have to figure it out or else things are going to go bad. However, there was a report that the management actually went to Fox and his agent asking, if we trade you, where do you want to go? So I think that kind of turned De'Aaron Fox sour. But it's not fair enough, honestly. If my boss came to me and I was like the top player at my top person at my work and they told me we're going to try to move you maybe, I'd be upset too. Yeah, it's when I remember, I'll always remember where I was.
Can I get you a Kleenex, Ryan?
Yeah,
I see some tears forming.
Honestly, when it came out, I did tear up, honestly.
Seriously?
I actually, not even
you
kidding.
You did? Oh, my God. You are a passionate fan.
And, I was sitting with my youngest brother in my basement, and he said, Zach LaVine on the Kings, hey? And I was like, huh? I wasn't looking at my phone, and I didn't know it. Then I was like, the contracts, that has to mean Fox is gone. And then I looked, and I've watched I was doing some math, and I've watched I probably watch about 70 Kings games a year fully. And I always watch the highlights and probably missed a couple games ever. So over Fox's career, I've probably missed or not watched the highlights of probably 4 or 5 of his career games.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy to think I've watched hundreds and hundreds of his games. So yeah, I didn't cry, but I was tearing up. I was like, man, this is it. And now that he's in San Antonio, I haven't turned bitter on him, but it feels like the allegiance changes. It's kind of a weird feeling. Like now it's just like, I still cheer for Fox, but now the Spurs we're competing with the Spurs, so I'm cheering for them to lose sometimes. It's a weird feeling.
It is a weird dynamic when you're that invested in a team. Like when you've got an attachment like that, and that really is what being a sports fan is all about. Like is finding some team that you identify with for whatever your reasons. And I remember you sharing what your reasons were, and it's pretty random.
2K.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? It's whatever sticks. It can be geographic. It can be any number of things. And in your case, a particular player who was highly impactful, very talented, had a long stint in Sacramento. To have him move, it is interesting. Now, bringing in Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine, I've never been a big fan because I find his style of play so erratic. You really don't know where his shots are going to come from or when they're going to come. He's very talented, obviously. Like physically, he's talented. Battling a lot of injuries. And by the way, a little bit of a tangent. And I mentioned this in my conversation with Ben Golliver. I was listening. I don't listen to podcasts that often, but
it's kind of ironic.
It really is. That's a whole different thing.
They say coaches don't play, I think's the saying. So
yeah. Well, I did play, but I listened to a podcast, and it was very highly critical of the modern NBA athlete and the amount of injuries that keep players out of long stretches of games. And this guy was going off on, why was it so different in the NBA 20, 30, 40 years ago when players were oftentimes playing 70 to 82 games a year, where now that's harder and harder to find. And in the case of Zach LaVine, Zach has had a lot of injuries over his career. So hopefully he stays healthy. The pairing, I guess, where I look at San Antonio right now, Ryan, not San Antonio, I'm sorry, Sacramento right now, Ryan, is that I just don't see where the chemistry is going to come from. DeRozan's a strange player for chemistry. Zach LaVine, and I'm not saying they're bad players, they're really good players, and I'm a big DeMar DeRozan fan, but I love Sabonis. Like, he's one of my very favorite players in the NBA. But I just look at Sacramento, and it just looks to me like they had to make a business decision. The business decision is made, and they're going to do the best they can to put a competitive team on the floor with these pieces, and they're back to work in the boardroom right now to see what they have to do in the offseason.
It's weird. We try to do this thing where the Kings try to do this thing where rebuilding on the fly, and it doesn't really work. So when we're trading Fox, instead of getting a haul of picks and some young assets, we say we just want a player to keep us afloat, so to speak. Zach LaVine is a very talented player, as you mentioned, is a 45% from three. Like, he's an incredibly talented player, but him throwing him in the lineup, we don't have a player in our starting lineup that would be considered elite defensively, and we probably only have one that's considered above average. So the starting lineup is Malik Monk, who's incredibly talented offensively, as everyone knows, incredibly explosive. Defensively, a little lax. Zach LaVine at the 2, again, incredibly offensively talented, but lax in defense. DeMar at the 3, incredibly offensively talented, but in defense, not really. Keegan Murray at the 4 is a shooter, but he can guard the best player typically. But again, he's not superstar defensively. And then Sabonis at the 5 is not a rim protector. So that starting 5 is tough defensively. And as I've watched, obviously, the couple games since we've traded him, and it just looks rough at times. It's everyone just cutting through us like it's butter.
Yeah, defensively, I mean, let's just face it, they're not going to be an elite team. Anytime this
8
year.
to 12 seed. That's kind of
well, yeah, and hopefully so. Now with San Antonio having De'Aaron Fox, I mean, we're going to see what kind of run they're going to make.
They've lost two since
I know. It's interesting. I think
Believe
the last
me, I'm keeping track.
Why, I bet you are. But the last one, 117, 116, I think.
And Fox's game winner got taken off the board. Like he hit it, but then there was.
Yep. But that was against Charlotte, and that's not a good loss.
That's a tough loss.
That's a bad loss, even with a new player in your lineup. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how these two young talents gel now, and if that's enough to get them into the playoffs at all. One of the teams that I'm really curious about is Golden State, because the adding of the maligned, for good reason, Jimmy Butler into the Golden State rotation is going to be really interesting. But I think, like, one thing about Jimmy Butler is he's a proven playoff performer. We all know what Steph Curry's like in the playoffs, and Draymond Green to a lesser extent. I mean, Draymond Green is probably about 70% of what he was, where Curry's probably 90% of what he was at his peak. And so Butler kind of in that same range when he's healthy and when his head's right. He should fit in well to Golden State, but the problem will be, and we're going to touch on this later too, but the problem is going to be they're just not that good. Now, I'm going to ask you a specific question. How do you feel about Wiggins being traded? Do you think Wiggins was treated fairly? Do you think his contribution to the Warriors was diminished? I mean, he was an all-star, I think, 2 years ago.
All-star starter.
All-star starter 2 years ago in 23.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened? Is it just Andrew Wiggins being Andrew Wiggins as he's been throughout his career? Is that the year where he finally put it all together and got his head right and really put out 100% on the court and showed how talented he was, but also how good a basketball player he was? But what happens to Andrew Wiggins, in your opinion?
Well, in Miami, he's going to be the second and third option, but second option at times behind Tyler. Then Bam Adebayo has moments too, so he'll get a chance to flourish. And the Heat culture is definitely something. I think his role in Golden State was heavily underrated. So Steve Kerr was incredibly upset about the trade. He said tears were shed when they were telling the players, like, they called them back in from the warm up and they said there's a trade, and that was when Andrew was traded and a couple other players. And Steve Kerr said Andrew Wiggins is one of his favorite players he's ever coached, and they said he's a really good soul. And also, on the same note, speaking to Andrew Wiggins, when Pat Riley met with Jimmy Butler when he first signed in Miami, they popped a bottle of champagne and they were talking, and Pat Riley asked Jimmy Butler, "Who's the most talented player you've ever played with?" And Jimmy Butler said Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
Which is it's like going through the players he's played with, it's like, wow, that says something. He played with Derrick Rose, he played with Karl Anthony Towns. He's played with a lot of talented players. He said Andrew Wiggins, and it's kind of ironic they're traded for each other now. I think Wiggins takes not a jump because he's already been an all-star, as you said, and he's won a championship as the second, third best player. But I do think he averages 17.6 points per game now. I think he can get to around 20 with the Heat, and I think he'll play his role perfectly fine, and they'll be a borderline playoff team like they always seem to be.
The Heat culture is very interesting, and I think when we use the when you use the term culture, it's used so freely and so easily in sports. But there are certain teams that do have a very specific culture that has been cultivated and built over long periods of time.
And the Kings is the inverse of that.
Yeah, 100%. No, you're absolutely right. Like, you look at the Miami Heat, you look at the San Antonio Spurs, and you can criticize the Spurs culture, because they have maintained their culture over their performance for a number of years, because there's only one way that the San Antonio Spurs go about building their teams. And, so certain teams, Denver's built a nice culture. Oklahoma City is building an unbelievable culture. And then there's other teams that are just reactionary. Like you mentioned, you would put the Kings in that category. Golden State is
the Mavericks apparently too.
Well, obviously, yeah. And that mystery will be dissected for years to come of how this trade came about. And I think the biggest factor that people find most controversial is, where are the draft picks? Like, you took Doncic at 25, who led your team to the finals last year, and out of nowhere traded him, and they didn't get any draft picks for him. Like, that's where the big controversy has to be dissected, and where people will be really questioning the validity of this trade and why it came about at all. But going back to Golden State and to Andrew Wiggins, I hope he thrives in Miami. I mean, Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, they have a very specific culture, and I hope that he is able to go there, because he is a really good guy. He's been up and down with all that talent that Jimmy Butler described. He's been real up and down in his career, and I think a lot of people have felt he's been underwhelming a lot of his career. And he came into his own a couple of years ago. He's kind of wavered since then. We don't know on the outside what affects players, what's going on in their lives, what's going on really with their health, all of those things. But the fact that he was the number one draft pick, the fact that he's obviously from Canada, and he, by all intents and purposes, everybody that encounters Andrew says he is exactly as Steve Kerr described him, a really good human being. And so moving him for Butler, really strange to me. And I, again, don't think it addresses the talent gap that Golden State has right now. And that's really what I look at them as. Maybe they'll be a bit better, especially if Butler's engaged. I mean, that's going to be the thing. Butler's engaged. You got a great coach. You got a great teammate in Steph Curry. We were joking before the show about maybe the first thing they should do is give gloves to Draymond and to Jimmy and let them duke it out and get it out of the way. But hopefully they'll gel. But it's certainly all of the shakeups in the NBA this week have made it a very, very interesting time for the NBA. And you know what, Ryan? It comes at a good time. It kind of felt like it was just kind of galumping along. Now we've got serious changes. Oh, great for ratings. I mean, the games are going to be off the charts, as will the jersey sales be for Mr. Doncic. So we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to bring the head coach of the University of Alberta Golden Bears, Barnaby Craddock, onto the show, and we'll talk youth sports, Canada West basketball, here on the Basketball Show with Ryan Reed and myself, Paul Sir, on the Sports Leader, Sports 1440. Barnaby, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, Paul?
I thought, man, what did I say that I offended Barnaby? He just slammed the phone down on me.
Well, that's not quite how it happened, but happy to be here and talk some hoops with you.
Oh, I'm glad to have you here, Barnaby. So nice win last night for the Bears, and you guys are on a roll.
Yeah, definitely having a better semester. A lot of factors there. I think we had a real tough part. Sometimes your schedule's weighted with harder games early. So we had some real tough ones early. But also, we have a young team, some first, second years. And, now they've had a few months with us, and they're playing with a bit more confidence, and the group's just sort of performing better as a whole. It's been fun. We'll see if we can keep some momentum going here into the playoffs.
Talk to me about Isaac Simon. He is from Regina, who you took two from last weekend. Talk about his season and impact on this 2024-2025 Golden Bear team.
Yeah, I mean, Isaac's one of the top players in the country in youth sports. He's a talented, athletic guard. He's one of these guys that sort of probably could have played in the States, but chose youth sports because he's a smart guy. He says, hey, this is a good level of basketball and great academics. So we're lucky to have him. And I think he's kind of he's maturing throughout the year and figuring out how to be the lead guard. And, his first few years here, he's played with some talented Bears backcourts. And, we had Adam Page and Lars Ashimwe and Brandon Micklejohn. And all of a sudden, those guys are gone and you've got the ball in your hands and everyone's looking at you and scouting for you and prepping for you. And, game by game, he's figuring it out and he played really well again last night. And so that's been a big part of our team's improvements as well, as he's figured out how to kind of become the lead guard on the team.
Head coach Barnaby Craddock from the University of Alberta joining us on the basketball show. Talk about the rest of your team. Like you mentioned, Barnaby, this is a young team. And over the course of a season, when you have a young team, you really look for certain markers in terms of their development, their understanding, their growth as players. Talk about how this team has been growing and developing, and if there are any individuals other than Isaac that you might point to as being the reason why your team has amped up its success in this second half of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's happened is when you graduate a group of seniors like we've had over the past few years, and you sort of say people have to figure out those new roles. And we've got such good character guys in the program. These like Max Russell's our captain. He's in year 5. Some days he starts, some days he comes off the bench, but he carries the Bears culture of like hard work and team first attitude. And so him leading the charge has just been fantastic. And I can't state how good a job he's done just keeping the group on path. As you said, as we had a rough first semester losing games, and he kept everyone positive and motivated. And other guy, Fahad Yusuf's been with us for a few years. One of those guys during high school never got to do a lot. COVID occurred, and now all of a sudden he's kind of hitting his stride. He's one of the best defenders in the country. He's knocking down shots. And then we got a couple first-year guys. Nash Semenuk, everyone knows his father was a Golden Bears legend back in the day, and his uncle played as well. So he's taken some time to kind of figure it out from a freshman's perspective, and now he's playing with confidence in the second semester. And Kyle Varner, another first-year guy who's having a fantastic year, started for us all year, knocking in shots and sort of switching and guarding people 2 through 4 on the floor. So a couple of those rookies have stepped up, and a couple of those veterans have stepped up, and it's been solid. I think we're definitely a lot more competitive now than we were a few months ago.
Well, I have to admit, Barnaby, one time I went on your website and I think the headline was something to the effect of Semenuk hits 23. And I'm thinking, God almighty, did I just go into a time machine? Because to see, I thought, man, I'm getting 1988 or whatever it was. It's great to see that. And it's great to see that generational contribution to your program. So as the tournament is in your sights now, not that far away, the playoffs rather, talk about the playoff format as it is this year, and what this will look like for the Golden Bears.
Yeah, I think there's 4 teams that get to host the first round of playoffs, and unfortunately, we're not quite going to finish in those top 4 out of 17. So we'll go on the road somewhere. Too many games still to determine what that involves. And for us, that's fine. We just we've been on the ropes all year and trying to improve, and we feel we've finally taken that step. So wherever we get to go, we just want to go be competitive, and it's more about us right now than our matchup or opponent. Just keep playing good basketball as a group, and see exactly where we stand.
This year is an interesting year in terms of the divisions in Canada West. Maybe share with our owners. I'm talking to the station owners or something, but to share with our listeners about what divisions you have in Canada West this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive conference, and I played in this conference years ago when the original 6. There's only 6 schools,
right?
And it was Vic and UBC. At that point, Simon Fraser was playing NAIA. And then we had Alberta and Lethbridge, Calgary, and Saskatchewan. And those 6 were the original 6. And until some of these new schools started to apply for U Sport status, now we have McEwen and Mount Royal and Fraser Valley, et cetera. So we're up to 17 schools now, and it's a big conference. And then the sad part is the powers that be have sort of separated our league play away from British Columbia. So we don't play our traditional rivals of Vic and UBC in league play anymore. And I think our fans are disappointed by that. I'm hoping that'll change as they vote in new schedules in the future years and we can get back to hosting them in our gym on an annual basis the way it used to be. But for now, we are playing our league play here on the eastern side of the Rockies. And then once you get into playoffs, everyone mixes back in together, and you play the BC teams again. So, so that's how it stands. I think I'm not a big fan of some of the changes that have happened to the conference, and I'd love to see us play and I know our fans that have been coming to games for years that support, Golden Bears and Pandas would love to see us continue to play those traditional rivals. And, it's exciting when the Vikes and UBC come to town. And people have been packing the gym for years. And to not have that in the schedule right now is unfortunate.
Well, unfortunate on a variety of levels because both, Vic definitely, but UBC too, very good teams. And so the matchup would be intriguing and the games would be hotly contested and a lot of fun to watch. So I appreciate your diplomacy, Barnaby, and getting your opinion stated without going too far. I'll be a little more blunt. I think it really, really is a mistake. But every year it seems like I really feel for the coaches and the programs because every year something new is getting thrown at you. And the amount of tinkering that goes on really makes it difficult. You mentioned about the original 6. I always crack up south of the border how the Big Ten is now the Big 22. And, like a conference realignment is not atypical anywhere. So you just got to do what you're doing. Go with what you're given and control what you can control and get ready for the playoffs. And I'm talking with Barnaby Craddock, head coach of the University of Alberta Golden Bears. Barnaby, I really would like to talk to you a little bit about the impact of the massive amount of changes that have taken place in the NCAA, of course, south of the border, and the way that 5 years ago, the way the NCAA was governed and regulated to today, my God, it's like you went from Earth to Mars because the differences are so vast with the free flow of players without restrictions now in terms of having to sit out for a year if you transfer, which I believe is still the case in youth sports. Am I correct? You still have to sit out a year, right?
Yes, that is correct. If you transfer youth sport to youth sport, you have to sit out a year. Unless you finish your degree and you go on to a graduate studies program. Other than that, you still have to sit out a year.
So now you've got that free flow of players, and players are being paid with the NIL money. So one of the phenomenon that has been happening, which really did not happen in the past, is Canadian youth sports players going south to Division I programs. The way Division I coaches are now recruiting is school to school and older athletes. And now we're seeing more Canadians, particularly from out east, but more Canadians heading south to play as they develop in the programs. How do you feel this works? I mean, number one, you can't control what you can't control. But number two, does this enter your thinking at all, Barnaby, or do you just have to take it as it comes?
Well, both. I mean, it enters our thinking, and I, have made my thoughts, and so have other coaches, to our administration and passing it on to the youth sports organization because I think they need to protect our product and protect Canadian university basketball, and that we're nobody's junior college league to have people recruit. We're 4-year degree granting institutions with a strong tradition and history of excellence in athletics. So, if coaches are going to start contacting athletes from our programs, that's very inappropriate. And for example, you're not going to have the UCLA coach call across town to USC and say, "Hey, buddy, you want to come over here?" And so why should they be able to contact the players on our team? And we need to have U Sports talk to NCAA and make that. Now, is that going to stop anything? I mean, people still drive without seatbelts, but doesn't mean we don't need to have some rules in place to deter that type of poaching of student athletes. And no one's committing to a U Sports school with the plan of transferring. They're committing to a U Sports school with the plan of getting their degree and playing for that, playing their career out. And at times things happen and people's transfer, of course, but that's never, but when you go to a junior college program, you're planning on leaving, and that's understood. So I think, this change, and you're right, Paul. It is a big change. I mean, it's NCAA is now a professional. It's a professional, and people are making money, and and that's changing the whole outlook of the game. I think the negative aspect is the lack of loyalty and younger student athletes learning to fight through some adversity rather than just transferring. Hey, I'm on this team and I didn't play 1 year. I'm going to transfer somewhere else, and then that doesn't work, and I'm going to transfer somewhere else. You're always looking for something better instead of back in the day, people would have paid their dues as a redshirt and a freshman and then finally eked out some minutes and become a star in their senior years. And I think that teaches the youth and student athletes a lot of resilience and how to fight through adversity. And I don't like the current landscape where we just sort of, something's not going our way, let's just transfer to a new place. It's never taking accountability to make things better for yourself. So I think that's a negative aspect of it. The actual paying of players, I'm all for. I mean, for years, I mean, the NCAA is a big business. They're making millions of dollars. These student athletes definitely are deserving of their share of that piece, and particularly as you get up into the March Madness in the top 50 to 100 Division I programs who are making a lot of money. And, it wasn't right when the student athletes were being held out there.
Well said, Barnaby. Very well said. I really appreciate you taking the time this morning. I know you got game prep for your game against Mount Royal again tonight. Best of luck to the Bears. One final quick question. Who are you picking in the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, you got to be crazy to go against Mahomes. He's showing over and over and over. Why would we think he's not going to pull it out of his hat? Remember a few years back they were playing the Bills and Josh Allen scored and there was like 13 seconds left and the Bills took the lead. And somehow he gets them a field goal in 13 seconds. I mean, it's unheard of, right? So, I mean, to be the man, you got to beat the man. So until they knock him off, I got to go with the Chiefs here.
Oh, that is great summary. Great summary, Barnaby. Again, best of luck tonight. Best of luck for the rest of the season. And I'm hoping we can connect in the spring because I'm hoping to do a roundtable on the developments in basketball, particularly at the NCAA level, when we get around the March Madness. So I'll be getting in touch with you then.
Yeah, love to. Look forward to coming back on. So let's do it sooner than later.
Sounds great. Barnaby Craddock, head coach of the University of Alberta Golden Bears, joining us on the Basketball Show.